Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a very special story to tell. I want to go over how I trained myself for a marathon in under 2 months and the things that I had to go through to accomplish that goal. It is going to be a really deep story, so make sure you watch until the end. With that said, let's get right into the video. So I am going to be dividing this story into 5 parts, all in this video. Part number 1 is going to be when the idea came in and the things that I actually had to do to go and accomplish it. Part number 2 is going to be how changing my own body was really important for me to accomplish this. Part number 3 is going to be all the negative effects that training so much had on my body. Part number 4 is going to be one accident that I actually made that helped me not surrender the day of the marathon. And part number 5 is going to be the hardest part of my trainings and the end results. So let's get right into part 1, which is when the idea came to me and the things that I had to do to actually go and accomplish it. So let's put you in this situation. I started running and I just started running as a hobby. I knew I wanted to run the Venice Marathon, but I was thinking it was next year, so it was supposed to be this year, 2020. I didn't know that they did the marathons every year, but now I know. But in the moment, I was just running completely as a hobby. I wanted to get myself used to running. So I was talking with a good friend of mine and I told her that I wanted to participate in the Venice Marathon, and she was like, "Oh, you want to run the Venice Marathon in October?" I was like, "Wait, what? In October?" And yes, she told me that the marathon was actually in October. So when she told me that the marathon was in October, I had like this boom in my head. I had a mental shock. I didn't know what to do. I had no trainer, I had no training partner, and I had no knowledge at all of how to train for a marathon. But I was like, okay, do we try this or do we not try this? And at the time, I had just recently finished reading this amazing book, not paid sponsor by the way, which is Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. So I was at that point a little bit more open-minded. I had 1 week running just for a hobby. I went from 1 minute to 10 minutes. I was feeling pretty good with it, but I knew that if I wanted to do this marathon, that was not going to be enough. But because I was already a little bit open-minded, I said, what, let's go for it. I stopped running for 3 days, just preparing myself mentally. Then I started to train for this marathon. I downloaded a running app and just say, you know what, let's go for it. And the first day I actually ran a 5K. 3 days after, I ran a 10K. And in my second week, I went for a half marathon. So I was overtraining a lot. Just to give you like an end results, I ended up completing 180 plus kilometers in less than 51 days to train for this marathon. Actually, in like 48 days or something like that. I ended up with 180 kilometers just to train for this marathon. So I was really overtraining a lot for it. And let's go to part 2. So part number 2, how changing my body was really important for me, and I think it was key because before this, I will just post a picture real quick here in the screen. You will see that I was really skinny. I was like 130 something pounds, so I was really skinny. But because I always wanted to change my body, I started working out, and actually in 4 years, because I had no trainer, like I say, I was only watching YouTube videos and training by myself, only pure calisthenic. I wasn't even going to the gym that much. I actually managed to change my body from this to actually this. And it was a really big step, at least personally. I was in the second picture, I was 158, 59 pounds, which is really different from the first picture, which I was only like 130 pounds. I was really skinny, as I say. But because my body was really used to having a really small amount of impact, I already had the mindset. So the mindset wasn't exactly the best. Of course, I was overtraining for this marathon, and anything, let me tell you that anything that I did before was as close at this much training for this exact marathon. But at least I had a good base, and you know what they say, that luck is when you prepare yourself and the preparation meets the opportunity. Well, that paid me well this time because at least my body wasn't starting exactly from zero, but I was definitely not a runner before I started training for this. Now, part 3 is when things get real. As you know, I was overtraining a lot for this marathon and I got my first injury 4 days after I started running, and it was going into my first 10K. I got an injury in my right knee, but I said, okay, if I cannot push through this pain, it is going to be just impossible. So I just went in those 10 kilometers with everything I had. The next day, I had a swollen knee and I went for a 5K. And I say, if I cannot push through this pain, this is not going to be possible. It was hurting me badly. Every step was hurting a lot. But I say, okay, let's put a little bit more weight in my left knee. And what do you think happened? I got an injury on my left knee. But the day after that, I woke up and I went for a 5K. And I had two swollen knees, but I say, you know what? I'm going to push through this. I don't care. If I cannot go through this pain, it is not going to be possible. And the moment I was thinking, Brian, are you really sure that it is worth it to lose your legs for this marathon? And I was like, I'm going out. I'm going all out. I don't care about nothing right now. So I just went out and completed that 5K with swollen knees. So I remember that after this 5K, I actually did took a rest for my knees, but I have to say they kept hurting during the whole training process. My knees never got better during the whole running process. Overtraining like this had really negative effects on my body. One of the other negative effects that it had is that I wasn't doing a good diet for the amount of running I was doing. So I started to lose a lot of weight. Right now, for example, for the challenge I did actually 2 weeks ago, I was like 146. So that means that from the last marathon, I actually lost like about 15 pounds and I never got them back because I still kept running after that marathon and never focused on actually doing the correct diet. Part 4 is the accident that actually pushed me to not surrender the day of the marathon. This right here is my bib number, and in the back of my bib number you had to fill the emergency information without your personal data. And guess what? I forgot to fill my bib number. So as I was getting into 30 kilometers, I was really close to Ponte de la Libertad. That bridge was hell, okay? It was 3 to 4 kilometers long and you will not see the end. You will keep running and running, and the mental effect running in that bridge had on me was painful because there were like four ambulances in the way. There were people in the floor that could not keep running anymore. The sun was hitting you directly in that bridge, and it was like, oh my god, how the hell I'm going to complete this? But then I remember, okay, if I want to quit right now, I just need to give them my bib number and they have all my information. And it was like, oh, Brian, you didn't fill your bib number emergency information. So if I just fell in that bridge, I will have no way for them to know who I was or to contact my family or anything. So I was like, oh my God, we just have to push through this. So I started walking. I lost like maybe 25 minutes to half an hour walking the entire bridge because my mental state was not good in the moment. The sun, the ambulances, it was like the perfect state for me to surrender, the perfect part for me to say no more. But the fact that I never feel my bib number was just like, we have to go through this. There is no going back today. Last but not least, part 5, and which was the hardest part of my training. Remember, I had swollen knees during this entire challenge, but I knew that if I wanted to complete this, I had to go, let's say, at least 30 kilometers to see if I could make it, and that was the hardest part of my challenge. That day I went out with the idea of running 30 kilometers. I actually arrived at the park kind of late. It was already getting dark at that moment, and it was like, okay, let's go for this. I completed a half marathon with no problem. Of course, my knees were hurting, but I was already used to my knees hurting, so I was like, okay, let's push through this pain through the entire 30 kilometers. When I got into kilometer 30, guess what? I had the worst pain of my life up to this moment. There is no comparison up to this moment of the amount of pain I felt that day. My legs stopped moving. I was running and out of nowhere I lost the connection to my legs. My legs stopped moving and I just stayed there like, okay, what is going on? Why can't I move? I was trying to feel my legs and let me tell you, there was so much pain that I could not even feel them correctly. And I was like, okay, I think something just broke. But I say, Brian, if you can't do this, there's no way we're completing this. I just got all my strength. I closed my eyes even and I started screaming like crazy in the park. I was so lucky there was nobody, but I started screaming of pain. And I made one leg move, then I made the other one move, and I just started doing a light run. And the pain was unbearable. It was like a pain directly in the nerves that was getting directly from my feet to my head. It was horrendous, horrendous. But I kept running, and then that's when I really found out the 40% rule was also true because when I kept running through that pain, when I kept running, even if I was feeling really, really bad, and I'm not telling you to do this, after a while, my mind just forgot about the pain, and I completed the last 3 kilometers without stopping. After I completed the 3 kilometers, I went to sit on a bench. When I sit in this bench, I start to breathe out. And I start to see this cloud of a smoke coming out of my mouth. I'm like, what the hell? I remember that there was like 7 degrees outside, that it was supposed to be cold as hell, but I was, of course, producing a lot of heat. But as soon as I remembered that it was supposed to be 7 degrees outside, everything just got cold. I started to shake because everything felt so cold, and I thought I was going to die in that park. I have no strength to move. I had no strength to do anything. I didn't even know how I was going to get back home. In a matter of seconds, I don't know where, but I got energy. My body stood up and I took off all my clothes and I pick up my bag, take out my clothes that are not wet, and I put them on and I sit back again. It was like this quick fraction of energy that I had to do that because my body was thinking that we were actually going to die. After that, I say, Brian, we have to move, we have to get home because the cold is going to kill us. I took like half an hour walking from that bench to the entrance of the park, which was not that far. Believe me, it was not that far, but I could not walk. After I got into Venice, I was supposed to take the bus to come home, but I could not take the bus. I called my other sister that actually lives in Venice and stayed at her house that day, which was a really painful thing to do because I had to go to so many ladders to get to her house. And I got to her house, I get in the couch and I instantly fall asleep. Like no words, no nothing. I just tell her like, oh my god, I think I'm dying, and I go to sleep. So which was the most incredible thing is that the morning after, my legs were fine. I had pain, but it was like the normal pain on my knees. But my nerves, my tendons were fine. And I could not understand that. I remember this 30-kilometer run was 1 week before the marathon, which means I completed around 72 kilometers in a single week because I did that 30-kilometer training run and then went and did the marathon. And it is up to this point that I'm starting to realize that I actually trained that much for that marathon. But hell, it was a hell of a training. And my end results were actually 5 hours, 3 minutes, 43 seconds. Remember that this took me out actually so long also because when I was getting to the part of the bridge that I was talking a moment ago, I actually walked the whole way through. But I'm so glad that I was able to complete this. And this is my story of how I trained myself for a marathon in under 2 months. See you guys in the next video.